Aloha Mavericks from all around the world. My name's Mike Kelly and I'm super excited to bring you yet another episode of Unmapped, a podcast exploring the world through the eyes of remarkable humans on extraordinary journeys. I hang out with pioneers, adventurers and trailblazers from around the planet, hearing their stories and unlocking the lessons learned from a life on and off the beaten path. And just a little bit of housekeeping, if you're enjoying the show, please consider sharing it with your friends, following and reviewing us wherever you listen to it, and check us out on Instagram at UnmappedPod. It would mean the absolute world, and I guess you get to come and hang out, which could be fun. All right, let's get into the show. So Craig was just on an absolute tear and then his internet cut out, and now neither of us can remember what the tear he was on was about. So we are going to move on from that and let that just sit in its little black hole. I hope it was enjoyable and I hope we didn't sort of cut it out midway. And we're going to just jump back quite high level to reset here. So Craig, I'm just wondering, what do you think? Let's just go really macro and quite broad with a little bit of a more standard question. I'd love to hear what you think is going to come out of AI and the future of tech that is going to be really positive, and what are some of the challenges or the negatives that you see that could happen. And yeah, let's keep this quite specific to AI.
We always just riff around, and it's just, even the short film that I was starting to structure on the creative side, was tackling this concept of a future, and what happens when, generations have relied on digital, right? So, never mind whether even universities become relevant, but put that aside, it's 50 to 70 years, will there be any remnants of books? Will there be anything physical any longer when we've entrusted everything, for whatever reasons, financial, access, all these things, everything into a cloud or into digital? Then should anything ever go down, is where I think, or solar flare, whatever, something happens, where are humans then? And that's how I try to frame a lot of the thinking, right? And so self-reliance is going to go to the window just in the direction of just seeing what social media and internet's done. Like, I think the ability to homestead, like, without books on how to do it, that's gone, right? Unless you got some guy who's been doing it the whole time, you're not regenerating anything. You know what I mean? So I guess the downsides are more, what are the potential outcomes as we outsource more and more of our human capabilities? And some of those things are great, like who wants to do the manual shit? But I guess if we become super reliant, then humanity faces some real issues of survival. In terms of its relying on something else, I don't know if you can call it being human at that point. The positives are all just the great ways that we're going to find ways to solve for it. Like, when people used to talk about, when I was in university, the population thing was always the thing. We're overpopulated. And the guy would be like, more people, more Einsteins. Like, there's two ways to look at it. And I always remember you always try to frame it like that. And so I think there's an opportunity to solve for a lot of big problems. I think it goes into the larger constructs of the world we're living in, or the simulation, or whatever the hell. This is the thing, like, we're meatbags and no one has any clue what we're doing here, man. No one. I think you're fooled if anyone can convince you of exactly what's going on. That's yet to have been discovered. Maybe each person can discover that for themselves, but there is no universal truth in that front, right? The negatives ultimately are this outsourcing of our own abilities. It's if you think we got echo chambers or filter bubbles now, they're only going to be exacerbated as you start clasping these things onto your face, as we start hooking, neural links into us, whatever, it allows for further integration.
What's your take on that? I know that you are quite, I suppose, I don't know if I would say you're pro Elon. I don't think you're ever just straight pro anything, but you definitely have an affinity with the mission that he's on in a couple of different ways. What's your take on neural implants, brain implants of technology?
Well, we're gonna have a great discussion because Nicholas Opie from Synchron who's Australia based, has been doing this kind of stuff non-evasively for longer than Neuralink, and he'll be at Southstart. So hopefully some of these questions we get to actually hash out a little bit. But I think, listen, the reality is, believing or not, I think it comes down to, listen, from a motor level of being able to, people that don't have movement, to be able to tap into their thoughts, to be able to navigate things, to do stuff. I think all of that is super amazing, and to give the abilities to people is obviously incredible. Now, I instantly go, well, if I can think this thing and it's now going to do that, and if you've seen these machines now where you can go into an MRI machine, be shown pictures of things, the computer reads your brain waves and it can reproduce the images, like that's getting pretty accurate now. So with upscalers and AI interpreting that, it's not long before what's in your thinking about, I could mid-journey out in some version that's pretty accurate. Like that's pretty close to now. So I think, again, I'm just thinking about what happens when that actually goes into the device and I'm in an immersive world and it's automatically adding the sounds and it's giving me characters and those characters have backstories and I'm talking to them, and like, why would I want to leave that if it's coming from my own mind? Because I'm into fantasy shit or I'm into sci-fi.
Dude, you are talking about stuff. I mean, you said earlier that you just feel like this is going to be a bit of a year where people clash up against the reality of what's coming. I mean, I'm not a monk with this sort of stuff. I don't keep as much tabs on it as I used to, but I'm not a mug with tech. And some of the stuff that you're talking about is blowing my mind and rocking my world right now. I would say globally, I'm in the 98th or the 99th percentile of educated people around technology, and hang out with people such as yourself who are really kind of doing stuff at the forefront. And I don't know a lot of what you're talking to me about in this podcast. People are not going to know what the fuck is going on.
Correct. So just, and this is why I tend to go to the more the societal aspects, because it is at such a pace that people, like, it's hard for people, and I'm not, I'm doing my best peddling, but there's people that are actually developing this stuff where I can only imagine, the open AI offices, how they're talking. But I guess that comes back to that when people don't know what to do, and this is, I call this the merge, right? There's going to be a point when there's an option. You can opt into getting this thing, and it's gonna make life easier for you because you can just think and tell it to do things, and it's gonna have agents that are gonna go and run and write those emails and set up the meeting and do this thing or research and get back to a paper on the information or whatever it is. Like all those things will be running. If it can run from a thought here, then that's gonna process. I think the really big thing that we have to address when that happens is, I think there will be people that will have a hard time dealing with reality as it starts, the scaffold comes down, where I wonder about scenarios where it's an option given to people like, hey, life's hard. This thing can sort you out.
Well, yeah, that's another thing you touched on before. Like when you start putting together all of the convergences of these different pieces of tech and how they're going to influence culture and society, and then how that influences culture and society will push it in a...
That's the true latent space that as humans we have to deal with, is the convergence of those things and how we adapt to them. Because these are all things within a 5-year horizon, right? It's a really, feasibility is not an issue, it's adaptability. So, it's so easy to imagine crazy scenarios where, people will happily talk about UBI, for instance, as a solution for some of the things that are going to happen. Or, OpenAI is actively doing a lot of research in that, as we know, based on the fact that, if AI is going to displace stuff, we may want to figure out a way to arbitrage and get value extraction that can financially support all the people that are going to be made redundant. So if people are okay with that type of thinking, how far is it to say, guess what, man, put this chip in here and the rest of your life's good, but guess what, we're going to just monitor all of your brain shit into this chip so we can better make AI stuff so we can support this lifestyle. Everyone's going to be like, sign me up. But at the same time, what level will these things have bilateral communication where, all of a sudden your emotional response to seeing this type of whatever, whether it's through goggles or not, is like, oh, I'm not bothered by violence. Oh, now I'm turned on by it. Like all these things are just, they're triggers. Like those things can be turned on and off in the brain. So those are the things, like people are going to experiment and mess with that. And as soon as you do that kind of a merge, you're kind of left to like a weird state where like I just don't know whether you can call that human anymore. You know what I mean? And I think that's coming in our lifetimes, right? So, or my children are going to face that. Like I think that's 10 years away. Like that sounds fast, but I think it's definitely like 100% feasible that 10 years is the horizon. So I don't have the answers. This is the curiosity that we talked about, and a lot of it comes from the fact that again, I'm a young, well, I'm not young, but I'm a father of young children, and I try to think about how I can best get them positioned and prepared for a world where certainly the conversation years ago had been like, will they ever drive? And I think now you can say, will they ever go to university? And then this year will be like, will they ever do this? And it's like, will they ever have a home? Will they ever own anything? Like these are all these things that people joked about a couple of years ago. Like the reality is you can imagine scenarios where they become more and more likely.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I'm a bit shooketh. Just the fact that I'm sitting here feeling a little bit overwhelmed, is a worry, because I get off on talking about this sort of stuff. And when I say it's a worry, I mean because there's just so many other people out there who are nowhere near as informed as I am and have no idea what's coming. And, there's so many people I know who've never used ChatGPT. Like, that's wild.
Yes, but there's also a bunch of people that are sitting in retreats discussing how this is going to be unleashed on the world. And so that divide, right? And that's the divide I think about, because I'm, with that human piece, I'm very concerned for the people that don't play around the way that I do, that aren't thinking about this, because it's going to happen where they're just not prepared, and then the repercussions, it's a cascading effect. And by default, positive and negative will be cascading in both directions. That has to happen. Like things have to be rebuilt around some of this stuff. Yeah, and I guess that's just the place that it's hard not to think about as a human being. I do think about it as a little bit like whatever unique perspective I have, what value can I provide in terms of that insight for someone that needs to prepare, or even just having conversations with parents that just don't even know how to deal with their kids that are slowly getting addicted. Like, like those are conversations that aren't had enough. I think everyone would love to have it, and maybe that's something that gets cracked open a little bit at the event, because I think it's an important one, right? Because I think people have now starting to see what happens after, an entire, like a 16-year-old's lived that entire life only like that.
For sure, for sure. And I guess I'll take a little bit of an opportunity here to just go back to you a little bit. I'm really curious. So, where do you see yourself fitting into, say, the next 10 years of tech moving forward? You've said to me that you want to be a little bit more proactive about putting yourself out there and working on projects, and obviously art is a big part of that, but it won't be all art. And so I'm just really curious, where do you want to be contributing your time to projects, and what sort of things do you feel like you want to be building in the next, sort of, call it 5 to 10 years?
Well, I mean, listen, I think part of it comes from a creative place, but again, like having a lot of my work or ideas spread around was the era of pre-social media. So for me, a lot of it was doing it in person. I would go to an event, I would share these crazy ideas, and I would talk with people and jam with people, and people want to do things, and they would be exposed to it. And I think part of a lot of the thinking that you get from this conversation, I'm not really a social media person. You know what I mean? Like I definitely, never even use Instagram. So it's like to live in a world where that's the expected distribution channel, or channel to get people to slide into DMs to do cool stuff. And me as a person that considers himself capable and enjoying doing cool shit, that doesn't work, right? So I've realized that for me to do that, like I want to, the same way that I want to share with you these interesting conversations, I want to find people that aren't aware of maybe what's possible creatively to produce, but like have an amazing brand or amazing story or want to do amazing stuff, where I could be like, hey, like, cool, let's do an amazing thing together. Because, even me work on this project, I'm not a video editor. I've come to the realization that as much as you have to know all these tools, if I can get with some guy that just knows how to do video editing and tell a story and cut it up, now my focus is on creating the world, that's a great mesh. You know what I mean? the same way as someone that. So, and I think that's an important part. And I think even when you look at that cross-pollination piece from the event perspective that we talk about, it's like you need those different people to come in to make 1 + 1 = 3, right? And then too often, in the world that we're talking about more and more, we're doing stuff on our own, right? And I think the true, really stuff that kind of breaks through that is collaboration. Collaboration is always going to get you to an interesting place. Whether other people enjoy it or not, it's another thing. But the amount of stuff that epiphany I had was through this collaboration, right? Like I would never have gotten to that place where I have a whole new framework for thinking and creating worlds that I never had because I was collaborating in real time with somebody. So there's definitely a certain power that comes with it. So I think I just want to do a better job of, sharing some of the possibilities of what tech can do viscerally, creatively, in a way to find opportunities as an outlet. Because what good is it if you or I or anyone else has good ideas and never shares, or fantastic musical creations that they never share with the world? Like, that's depressing. And I think there comes a point where when you realize the finality in the small piece of life that we have walking this planet, for whatever existence it's real or not, whatever that truth is, to not share, I think is it's just not good for anyone. I think the more that we can come to a place where we're happy sharing our feelings, our ideas, our creations to people that are open to like receiving them, like that's just a better world. And that's combating a lot of the stuff we've talked about. But it comes from that. I think people are natural creators in some way. If you ask them, in some way, there's a part of their world that they create. Some of them say, I create happiness for my children. I create amazing food. I create a pocket. Everyone's got their own way that they think they're creating something of value. But I think they don't talk about it in that framing as much. And I think we can do more of that. I think I'm using myself as I need to do a better job of that. Like, people don't know a lot of the stuff that we've talked about. And it's just, I don't like talk about it, but I think it's important sometimes where, how can you engage with that opportunity where maybe through sharing ideas and work that we all do, we can have an opportunity to get a bigger platform or work on a more interesting project, or sometimes commercially transact, because that's a reality we're living in. And if you can commercially transact and know that you can eat and have a roof over your head doing things that you love more than not, I would love to see more people work into that environment. And maybe AI will open that up for people, and that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, and that's the ideal utopia, isn't it? People being able to do what they love, and hopefully, like you said, AI can open that up for people, and that allows us to spend more time with other humans doing the things that we love outside of work too,
Being humans and getting together in real life. That's the shit.
Yeah, that is the shit. And I know we've talked about almost every topic under the sun in the last, however long we've been going for. And I feel like I just get to this point where I want to talk about the human to human experience. I have almost completely extricated myself from things that aren't that. And that was actually something that, you were the one that at a dinner last year brought up this idea of the human to human experience, and it just feels so much more important to me these days. And I've kind of stuck my head in the sand a little bit around some of the stuff that we're talking about, because I just can't see it going in a way that is going to be for the benefit of human to human experience. I can't see technology being built by people for people in a way that is going to be for the absolute maximum benefit for everyone. And that has been difficult for the idealist in me. And so I've just kind of switched off a little bit and have been going deep into that human to human experience, human to land experience, deep connection to place, to people, dancing around fires with drums banging around behind you, and all this stuff, just sitting around a fire and making music, having a jam. I have never done that before until, a couple of months ago. And
oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah, man. So I've been doing this thing once a month. It's called Castle Drumming, and the guys that run it just own a property not too far from mine on the central coast of New South Wales, and it is just the most incredible community of people. The guys that run it own the property. It's in the middle of a rainforest, and every month a bunch of people just bring their tents in, bring their vans in, and we just hang out and help each other. You self-resource yourself, but then past that, we all just co-create this community vibe where everything is an invitation. Nobody is judged for being themselves. And on the Saturday, we get a big bonfire going, and you're either on the drums just banging away, completely riffing with other people on the drums, or you're dancing around the fire to the beats and screaming and making primal Amazonian sounds, and acting like we're probably on psychedelics and ayahuasca, but everyone's sober. It's a sober event, and it's just incredible. Like, bring yourself. People work on all of their stuff through this process. You're dancing out all your emotions. You're dealing with people with no kind of like nothing to run away to. There's no substances. You're kind of in the middle of nowhere. There's no reception. You're kind of just in the space with people working it out. And then all of a sudden, when the fire ends, just around the fire and the embers of the fire, people just bring their guitars out, and all of a sudden we're all just making music, either singing or hitting on the drum or playing guitar. Or people bring the flutes, like whatever floats your boat, bring it out. Everything is accepted, and it's just this gorgeous energy of pure creativity, and it's absolute spontaneity, free, not giving a fuck if you get it right or wrong. Just have a crack and see what comes out of your mouth or what comes through the instrument that you're playing. And if you realize that it's shit, or you realize you don't know where you're going with whatever words you're singing, just keep on going, because you'll find a way to bring it back around. You'll always find a way if you just keep going. Everything falls into place.
But that's the perfect analogy for life. I mean, I think that's the spirit, right? It's just like and that's that whole sharing thing, and you got it. That's what it's about. I couldn't. I mean, listen, the Grateful Dead community, or that experience that I had that transformed me and put me on a path, was exactly what you're referring to. Like those experiences for me as a musician in a band. Like that was much of my youth, was just doing exactly what you're talking about. And there's this superb magic when you witness it unfold in a raw setting with multiple people. Somehow we just all hit these things at the same time, and it created this feeling. And it's like, that's when you start realizing there's a resonance that and that's how we kind of surf,
Absolutely complete resonance, and it was something that I'd never really experienced before in this kind of creative way. That first one, the first castle that we went to, we all ended up, there's about 15 of us in the end. I mean, there's a lot of people there. There's about 200 people there, but there's about 15 of us sitting around having a jam after the fire late at night. And these guys are just belting out 10-minute songs on the fly. Someone just makes a guitar, someone jumps in with a verse, and then someone else makes a chorus up, and then everyone starts to learn the chorus, and we all sing it, and then someone else jumps in with a verse, and it's just beautiful. And then it just, honestly, it blew my mind. And if they recorded this, I'm sure it would be like millions of views on YouTube. It was just amazing, and it just comes from absolute nowhere. It's just full permission to live and be and in the flow, like live in the flow. At one point at New Year's, we were just sitting around the fire and the jam started, and no one really knew what we were going to sing, and someone just walked past telling a story about an orgy, and then we all just heard that, and then someone within the jam just said, what about a story about an orgy? And then someone else goes, story about an orgy. And then all of a sudden it just kicked off, and we just rolled with it. Yeah. And that was so incredible to watch. And, from there it just keeps going, and then it loops back around, and it's so cool. And then by the end of it, people are just in the flow with what they're saying. They don't know where they're going with what they're saying, but they're just going with it. And you just trust that at some point you're going to bring it back and it's all going to make sense. But you don't know how or when or why, but you just keep going. And like you said, that's life. This beautiful kind of, everyone just bursts into laughter. Someone brings it back around in the funniest way, and they didn't know how they were going to do it. And then all of a sudden, it's like done, and then you're all back in the verse, this beautiful, innate, human-to-human creative connection. I mean, I've never seen that before, and it was amazing. And it's one thing that we just absolutely, we just don't want to lose.
Well, no, but it's not even want to. I think it's not even want to lose. We don't want to lose it because it's one of the things that we actually need to make sure that the future that we leave for our children or live ourselves is right. I mean, your example, I think of a very similar thing when another Dead show where it was like, crazy, like, there's just, you get, tens of thousands of people. It's just, you can imagine what the end of a Grateful Dead show is. We're all staying in these hotels. One of these hotels, people pulled a fire alarm or something happened, and it's just like this huge thing is going on. It's a huge annoying thing until someone sitting around realized, all right, that's an F sharp. And all of a sudden, everyone just started singing and playing with their instruments and just playing in rhythm to this, where it turned into the most beautiful thing because they were in resonance with it. But I think this is the thing. It's like it's the one thing that's integral to the experiences that we're talking about is this temporal aspect, which I think is so key. And that's how I think about these events too, right? It's like there is a moment in time where that happens. Like, and that's a very special part because people had to choose to enter a certain time and a certain space with certain people to be a part of that. And that whatever that gets created, whether it's my, F sharp jam or your thing of there or Southstart, it's that moment is made by the participants where you want to encourage or enable as much of that sharing as possible so that you create as much of a resonant field that people can start picking up on the frequencies to try to get everyone kind of across a common, right, we finally all got to the key in G. Maybe no one was doing anything more than that, but we all got tuned up to the frequency. And that's enough for people to walk away and go, I was humming, like something was happening. And it's a real thing.
Yes, and that's the thing. If all we ever managed to do was just get in the same tune, that's like it's the most beautiful thing. That's it's overlooked like it's not important, just getting into the same tune. That's kind of when people think everything starts, but that's when everything happens. It's overlooked as not important, but it is the most important thing. Like the most important thing that there actually is, to just be in tune with other people and in flow with the resonance of the world. If everyone connected into that flow of energy that's moving through everything and everyone else, it kind of becomes an interdependent and co-created, beautiful, messy, matchy, chaotic, yet somehow perfectly structured, almost living, breathing thing. Like with that very first jam, there was a moment we were jamming about having a jam. So it was a jam about a jam. Me and my mate Will, we had never seen anything like this before. And we're just sitting there, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's this part of the jam where there's a little bit of a break where we'd kind of made this kind of little quiet point. And then Will and I, both at exactly the same time, just go jamming around as a part to add to the song itself. Both of us at exactly the same time, the same thing at the same tone. And we both looked at each other, eyes wide, just going, what the fuck just happened? Like, how did you not, he didn't know, I didn't, we were just in the flow, totally in the flow. I could not believe it. It was one of those little moments in your life where the penny just drops and you go, there's a lot for me to learn going on here. I could not believe that it happened. And it felt so sacred and core to the existence of being human to be a part of something like that. And it was just, it was absolutely incredible. What more is there than that? What more is there to life than that? I mean, I know we've literally gone to the meaning of life now, but that honestly was just, it felt so core to the essence and existence of being human, but
No, but then it comes back to the technology thing. But none of that had to do with technology, right? And so again, will technology enhance those experiences, or will it take us further away from that primal connective thing that is human, right?
Well, yeah, totally. And ideally, technology is going to help humans free up more time to be able to do these things more often. We started this on human to human connection, and we end up in resonance, right? And the two really go together. And I'd actually planned to ask you about Southstart. You create Southstart, and it's so obvious listening to you talk. The way that you create Southstart is to do with this idea of creating resonance between people and creating that flow between people. The way that you think about creating space and bringing people together and curating an experience such that you facilitate that resonance is quite gorgeous, and this is around the idea of the human to human experience. I think that this idea of focusing on being really, really good at providing humans with experiences or spaces in which they can connect with other humans and involves connection and sharing. Well, I mean, connection is sharing and sharing is connection. Really, there's just this. I see so much value in being good at that, and I suppose this is a bit of an invitation for you to speak into Southstart a little bit, and I suppose I would really like to understand and get you to chat about your philosophy of what you try and achieve and why you think the way that you do it works so well.
I think it's really a lot of the things we've been talking about, which is, it's how do you create? It's creating an environment, right? It's the same way. It's creating an environment that takes people enough out of what they're used to or expecting, but not too far, right? Like, so that has to happen. You have to just take them into a place where, okay, they can let it go down. Like, all right, the potentials are down. I don't have to be. This isn't a thing where I have to work a room. I'm not at a thing where I have to And so you got to break down the barriers that people have, because you have this huge spectrum of introverts to extroverts, right?
How do you do that? How do you create a space at a tech conference where people don't feel like they have to work a room? I mean, I know it happens. I know people are, but it's kind of not the priority that people are there for. And it's quite magic how you do it. How though?
Well, I mean, like if you come to our lawn bowling tournament, where's the lookup sheet for how do I network at a lawn bowling thing? Like it's not, you know what I mean? Like there's no protocol for that. So you try to do things that are so common, such as gathering around for food, eating in intimate ways with your hands, doing things that are primal, more things that bring you back to being raised around family, or primal roots of just gathering around food tables. Like, these are all just cues, I think, that we all have that kind of just lower our barriers of resistance, right? So it's just trying to do that in a way. But listen, a big part of it is the people, man. It's the people that come. And as much curation goes into just knowing certain people are going to draft in certain people and other people might not come. Like, you have to dance this weird sort of web of all these relationships to try to bring together an environment where you know that all these people are going to talk about things in a way that's going to feel like people have permission to go and talk about that topic after. And these people are going to introduce you to something and do it in a way that's opening, where they want to engage with people, so that there's a lot of touch points for human connectivity. And I think even the event itself is less structured around the tactical transactional pieces as much as the gooey, soft, like, what the fuck is being a human, and like dealing with the realities of trying to build something in a world and having a family. These are all equal parts. So I think it's having conversations that people want to have, and I think doing it in a way that's human. I think that's just a big part of it, where people feel like they're included. I mean, I don't know. There's not a lot to it other than careful. Now, that goes into the weeds of all the little things. Like, how many times can I bring people together, then pull them apart, and bring them together and pull them apart, and do it in different ways, so that, you're on a bus ride with me and a couple people that you've never met, and by the time we get somewhere, you catch up with Kat or someone else we see, and they've been on with 4 or 5 people, and now we all come together with our new friends. It's like, ooh, got a new gang, and it's like you try to yeah. And I think for a lot of people it happens in different groups, but those gangs get bigger and bigger. To the end, you'd want to try to, how do we all come together as this one big gang and celebrate, where we feel like we've had enough of a common journey in this experience. It's not like I actually walk through the corridors of a convention center trying to figure out how to get my $1,200 worth it. It's like, holy cow, I just made a bunch of friends and did all this stuff that I'll never forget. Or I sat around a jam. Like, there's going to be times where these things will happen, and people are going to witness some of these moments you're talking about. What are you laughing at?
Oh, you know what I'm laughing at. I'm not going to say it.
But it's the framing, right? So part of it's the framing to those things. What's the expectation going in? And sometimes you don't want an expectation. Like, I love the fact that I got people still. I got someone text me like, so dude, I'm not so sure exactly what's happening. So I got my ticket, but like, it's laid out enough where you should figure it out. But like, there's some people that just where's my what happens at 2:30 here, and it's like, and I think it goes to that magic, dude, of people that are committing to a place and a time and bringing themselves into it, and the people that know the value in that are the people that largely are attracted to what we're offering, and they come, and that makes more of that, right? So people just know, like, this, we're making this, not, it's like, it's not Southstart doing it. It's like everyone has to realize you are making this. By you coming, you're an integral part of this mesh that gets created, that we're all living inside. There's this dome of energy and networks and capital and all ideas, but it's all created by the people that are there. We're all under the roof of this thing, and we're all freely navigating that and feeling quite comfortable doing it. But people have to know how to work that environment to how they are as humans. But I think we try to create an environment where there's a lot of entry points to exploring that terrain.
How how do you navigate? You have such a, I suppose, a deep knowledge of tech, and then you can flip into the people stuff and understand that really well as well. How, that's a Venn diagram that feels like they should be like the sun and Pluto, yet you seem to navigate them really well, both at the same time.
Right. And so it comes out of those early days where I found tremendous success from getting some of my work highlighted on the world stage. I was doing a lot of these events. So I was going around speaking at events that existed at that period of time. So number one, I realized how amazing it was to get these groundbreaking people. Because before, there's no social media, man. There's email, right, and some design bulletin boards, and that was it. So to see all these cats in real life and party and hang out and have these experiences and just get silly and do stupid things and share ideas and what we're working on that no one knows about, and like, these are all special things that grew community. But what I realized, which I think is the distinguishing thing, is that I would be also touted around these larger conferences where it was 1,500, 2,000 bucks. It was the heyday of, stuff was popping off. So the real people that you wanted there were the young people, the people that couldn't afford a 2,000 ticket. Some kid who's just hacking away in his basement building some crazy thing that we've yet to see, but he doesn't have access to this. So one of the things that I was always doing was throwing these unofficial events around that, because all my friends were all coming in for the event. So I said, let's just get over this old warehouse. Let's get a couple kegs and some punk bands and some music, and just get a whole bunch of projectors, and we'll just have impromptu sessions and just hanging out. And it's $5 to get in for beer and learning. So I did a lot of these kind of events to make sure that there's a dispersion of that energy, because everyone's there, right? How do you amplify that? Because it wasn't getting amplified. And Southstart is an attempt to try to bring more and more of those disparate groups in to take advantage at the same time, because that is the true power. So I spent a lot of time doing those events, and eventually I, falling into the sort of the TED community and being a part of that, and seeing how they activated very leveraged people, right? Like, there's a different perspective on, how they tried to look after people at that level. But the same thing happened there, where it was like they had all these young people in, and there was a level where they were inclusive, and then even that got too big, where all of a sudden there was two groups, like the Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates hang out here, and all the other young founders didn't go to the same after parties and dinners. Before it was always like that. And so there was a magic, and when everyone was in there as equals sharing ideas, the magic was lost for me when that turned into two things. It's the same problem that Southstart will always have, and why deliberately we've kind of had this last day experience, which is out, among nature and going out for a regional offsite. Though that's going to be probably half the number of the people attending the main kind of conversations and more traditional formatted type stuff. Because if you get too big, you lose the ability of extracting the intangible value that exists when we come together. So it's a very delicate thing that we're always consciously thinking about, is how to shape this in a way where we're never getting it to be where it doesn't quite maximize where the sweet spot is. And unfortunately, it's a weird thing where it's a smaller numbers where the magic happens, and to elevate that experience, it's difficult, because that's a very expensive proposition to do well, and a lot of the people you want can't afford that. So that's the other part that we struggle with. How do we maintain this level of quality experience, but still make it affordable for other people to go? Because other things like this you'd be paying $2,500. You know what I mean? And so it's but a lot of that is, again, the community, a lot of people chipping in and providing and helping out, and without people feeling that, like, I want this to be considered, I don't want this to be something that's considered separate from the community. The more that people say, you know what, Southstart is ours, this is our community, to have a voice, to get together, to have the conversations, and it be open to as many participants as possible. I would rather people see it as just, we're the substrate that everyone can kind of come in and play with, and we're going to help curate that and facilitate that to be effective based on what we can do. But we can't do it. It's the community that brings the value, and that's a communication that has to happen, which is a difficult thing for, wait, I'm part of, you know what I mean? It's like, people don't think like that in Australia, especially, as much as other places I've been, where they feel like they got free reign to come in as a more of a participant.
Did you know when Southstart started, or when you started Southstart, that you would be able to create this? Or, you know, we've had plenty of conversations about this, and Adelaide is kind of the perfect spot. It's unassuming, it's not pretentious, it's far enough away from everywhere else that it kind of feels like everyone's getting out of town, but it's only a couple of hours away. But when you started, were you at all concerned, you know, would people fly to Adelaide for something like this? Were you focused on the Adelaide community, or were you going for something that would feel more national? And was it always kind of a strategic thing to want to start in South Australia and really kind of focus on bringing everyone into Adelaide for a nationwide conference or festival? Kind of both.
You have to think bigger than, I mean, listen, there was not much of it was a pretty nascent community. I mean, it certainly existed. I won't say it didn't exist, but it was still young days in Australia generally, and certainly in Adelaide. For me, I guess, just having done this it was a national. I did the Canadian version of a festival that I started with a buddy, or like, it was always, because you bring in a larger faction of people, and it's that building those bridges and pathways that become more useful. Now, it was also, listen, I just arrived. Like, I'd been here 6 months when this thing started the process, so I didn't know a lot myself. So I definitely took it as, also at the same time, this is a wonderful opportunity to start establishing some connections for myself through this, to build this thing, right? Like, it's like those things have to happen at the same time for it to be effective, right? It's a personal persuasion process. So I mean, like, I remember, like, one of the first people was Cam Adams. Like, that was obviously what Canva was doing, and me, like, I was doing the Canva for music, so like, I just had a lot of love for what they were doing. They were democratizing this level. So, but that was bringing a not only a national one, but like one of the biggest ones, right? Like, trying to get, how do you get one of the biggest ones to come? So I think it was always that intention, because listen, there's an element of, like, you gotta kind of, I wish it wasn't the case, and we're almost out of that now. The traditional model is Richard Branson speaking at fucking, whatever. People, Richard Branson, I'll pay $700 to go to the day where Richard Branson gives his keynote. Like, that's the traditional thinking of an event, right? And you pay $300,000 and you get Richard Branson, and now you're going to get a bunch of CEOs and guys that'll get money from work and go there and to see Richard Branson, and they'll pay $200 extra to get their picture, and they'll put it onto LinkedIn. And like a lot of the model works around that, and then the stable of people that support that, and they're all paid gigs, right? And sometimes you need those names to get people out. But the reality is, I feel like the Southstart community and the just startups community and just the real people that are doing it, they don't need all that. They need each other. They need support from each other. They're building multi-million-dollar business in the same country, in the same or different markets at the same time. It's that same thing. They need to support each other. Like, the learning you're going to get is from the guy that, exited last year, that can talk to you about how you might be changing what you're doing now. If you want to exit, you're not prepared to do that. And I can tell you those things. Like, you're only going to learn that from a guy who's done it in a similar environment. And that's what I want to be able to say at the end of the day, is that Southstart's an environment where those types of relationships and conversations happen from a community perspective. And you need each other. And I hope that people see it as a dip into that for a few days, to really get that just-in-time, peer-based, real talk.
It's interesting that we're having this conversation. I had a conversation like this with Eli. You've met Eli, and when we were 18 or 19, we were both studying event management together, and I remember getting together in our early 20s and wanting to throw parties. And I would always be like, let's just get the Calvin Harris. Let's just figure out how to get the big act. We'll lock them in and we'll just pack this place out. And Eli was almost the opposite, and he was always really trendy. He always understood social kind of dynamics. He's culturally very, very intelligent, very adept, and so he understands these things and trends and how to create something kind of cool and this. And he's always kind of said, dude, that's not what you do, because you're always going to be banking on the big acts. You're always going to be chasing the big act. And so anyone who's going out and getting a Tony Robbins or a Gary Vee or whatever to come out to Australia, it's a different model, but you're not creating something for yourself with your own value prop and your own kind of goodwill. And it's not even really about that. You're just throwing an event at a bunch of people that don't know each other and will never talk to each other and will never see each other again. Just sit in a room and listen to one dude up on a stage talk about a bunch of stuff that they've probably already heard on a podcast before, and then walking away and not knowing anyone from there. And I don't know what you've gained from that experience all of the time. Sometimes there's some novel things there, but you're not embedding into a community, and there's no stickiness to the brand that's putting on that event. And I think that's probably what I mean mostly. I didn't really get it when Eli first said it to me years and years ago, but as I've gotten older, I've understood it more and more. And I think Unmapped is kind of a good example. I don't really know how I've done it, but I don't focus on the big names. I look for people who are just genuinely really interesting, and I've kind of got this idea of wanting to create a little bit of a family around the vibe of Unmapped, and people listen to it because they like hearing voices of people that they haven't heard on other podcasts, and I really put effort into making it feel like something that people want to be a part of, and it's just, there's just something a little bit different in the approach. Like I said, I don't even really know what it is all the time, but I think about Eli's perspective a lot when I've thought about it a lot when I've built Unmapped, and being able to, Eli does this thing where they do a gig every month, and it's a dress-up party, and it's a bit fun, and it's cool, and they add a narrative to it, and they really built a community around the gigs that they run with Eli's brand, with his music label. And it's bolting on that community and allowing the community to co-create like you do with Southstart. There's just so much stickiness to that, because it was never about getting people to come for money anyway. It's about just creating community. I bet most people, when Gary Vee comes out, most people wouldn't even have a clue what the name of the business that brought him out is, because it's just irrelevant. You're not there for the community or for the business that brought him out. You're just there for that one guy up on a stage. And I don't even know if they are that, I think it's quite hard to be profitable doing that too, because...
Yeah. But again, it's circular in the fact that if you try to go that route, then all of a sudden the experience, to make it worthwhile for everyone, Gary Vee, number one, because he's the one that sets the price, it's like now you have to do it in some soulless vacuum of a place that can handle all these people. And so you're not going to get what the Southstart vibe is. And like you're saying, the content you're going to getting is not going to be bespoke. It's going to be the same thing you gave at the carpet manufacturing of America's fucking thing that he got paid to do last month or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's like, and I think that's the same why it's like, there's a lot of people I would have loved to have had as part of Southstart, but they've entered the speaking circuit. And so you got to speak to the speaking people. And as soon as you do that, you're starting to work into someone that's part of their gig is speaking. So it's a different delivery. You're going to get canned stuff more or less. They're not going to create something custom for you. And, Southstart's where we have people coming in and it's 3:00 in the morning drinking whiskey, and they say, you know what, screw what I was going to talk about. We should be talking about this, and that's it. And you have to be able to roll like that. It should be responsive like that. And I think we try our best to, even when we prep people, it's like, these are the same ways you might enter this conversation. Like, here's some things I think we might talk about. But if it goes off the rails, that's part of the magic of you brought these people together. That's what you get. And I think that's the magic. And some jams are amazing, and sometimes you hit those wrong notes where it takes a while to get out of it. But then Buddy, steps out and they make magic again, or someone steps in. I think you have to be open to, and I think that's something that as an expectation we have to make sure people go into is like, it's as good as it's going to get ever for that moment in time, and you can help make it better.
I love that we're talking about this, Craig. You know, to put this into the perspective of this podcast, when I sent you a message yesterday, I was doing the prep and I thought to myself, and I said to you, hey man, have you got other stuff on tomorrow? Because this could be a seriously like long show. There's heaps of stuff that we could talk about, and this has been a long podcast. This is about an hour longer than anything that I've ever done before, or it probably will be by the time we finish. And you know, a lot of people would think, oh, let's just trim it down and edit it and stuff. And of course, I will tidy it up and things like that. But there's something about the magic of listening to people, two people, four people, whatever, just riffing and jamming and kind of realizing, you know, like they're just kind of just going off on these tangents. They don't really know. They're like, what the fuck are we talking about every now and again? And then you sort of bring it back and you're just in the flow, and in trying to make that thing compact and make sense, I think sometimes you're actually making it make less sense because you're taking away the human experience of what this conversation has been, you know, and just allowing that flow to be witnessed is such an integral part of the process of the things that we've said that really probably have a bit of profundity or value or whatever. This is where the magic's at, you know, in the jamming.
Yes, but I think the interesting part about the format when you're riffing too is that multiple times, for me for sure, and I'm sure as well for you, there's moments where there's a reference to a previous thing where the context now gets stronger and the ideas get more solidified, and they find a longer temporal stream, or all these things happen that you can't do. Where if we were to run it through GPT after, it'll give us the condensed version saying, the interesting thing was actually this thing, and the 4 layers of that, how it plays out in society, technology, and like, it's like, oh yeah, we did do that. It's like, but it's hard to go into that with that, right? And to be honest, as a creative process, I struggle with that. I'm a perfectionist, and I have too much stuff that I don't share where it's probably detrimental to me not sharing it. Where I know I have to get closer into, like, not Twitch streamer, but like I've got to, if I'm just creating stuff and capturing me when I make music live, or I'm creating live and just spitting it out, it's a much more authentic, honest way of doing it, right? Where it's just like, here it is. Like, this is what I made today. Or just picking up a mic and having a conversation. And that's the creative effort. It's not this like, got to do it like this and set this and this has to, there's sometimes for me, there's just too much work in that versus just finding a place where you just are doing it constantly talking, constantly capturing, constantly creating.
Yeah, man, for sure. Particularly with social media, things don't have to be absolutely perfect. And this is something that I'm not a perfectionist. I used to be, and I don't really know what happened, but I just kind of let go of that pressure a little bit and allowed myself to not be perfect. But I'm so curious, as a self-professed creative perfectionist, I'm really curious to see if this resonates with you. If all you're ever doing is trying to create perfection, then do you feel like it kind of takes away a little bit of the magic when something just is perfect the first time, you know, in the flow, and it happens and it just comes off so well, and there's something about the messiness of everything else around. There's something about the fact that so much is imperfect. I mean, everything really is imperfect, but there's just something when something just fully clicks, there's just that awe and wonder that's generated from that perfect moment in space and time where everything comes together and clicks and kind of gets, and that kind of gets a bit lost. The magic of that kind of gets a bit lost when everyone's just trying to manipulate everything away from what was in its natural essence into something perfect that it never was.
But dude, I mean, but to take that analogy right to us as humans, this sick desire that people, you know, like who looks at a tree and goes, ah, that tree's kind of ugly. No one does that. You know what I mean? And I think, you know, as humans, the kind of cosmetic surgery and the way that we're trying to create ourselves to be different than who we are, like that's happening at such a basic level where we're manipulating our bodies and shaving ourselves and doing crazy things, implanting of things just to be somehow across that. So, I mean, that's a huge thing, I think, but that comes back to the larger thing about being closer to spirit and that moment of expression. For me, that perfectionist part is more letting go of that. There's a reality, right? And I tell this to the team all the time. No one really fucking cares, guys. And that's the real reality. Most things, if it's not about them directly, no one really fucking cares. That's reality. And my reality is I really fucking care. So my job is to figure out, and I need people around me, and I'm learning that. Like I have to have more people help me decide, no man, like this part that you passed like in the first like 5 minutes, that's good enough. Whereas I'm like, oh no, it's like I see this. And so I have to figure out where is that a happy place for me also, right? Where I'm happy with the work, whatever the work is, but also knowing that it's not, yeah, it's and the more you enter into art world, whatever art means, and I think art is a reflection of your experience, of your interest, of your feelings. That's what art is to me. It's nothing more than that. But that why I have a hard time shortcutting on that stuff, right? If I'm not really communicating that thing.
For sure. And I feel the same with poetry. I write them, but I don't, I don't always, if I have a poem and I write it, but I'm like, oh, that doesn't just really land, or I don't feel like it's been something that's come totally from the stream, or there's something not super special about it, then I probably won't share it, just like that.
And here's the thing I think that I've personally realized, your observation of seeing people jamming and going, holy cow, this is incredible, when you witness that. Like I've grown up like that. So that's my normal thing. So I have to start realizing that the ability for me to sit down like you and write a stream of consciousness poetry that's probably way better than the average person's, because people don't do it or haven't done it or don't think about it, or pick up a guitar and on the spot write, like be able to play something like, oh my God, that sounds like pretty good, or instantly make some really interesting imagery. Like that is something that is different than each of those outputs. That's the ability to actually do that as a person. Like not many people can just sit there and come up with a great idea for a marketing campaign. And those things are just, I've just done it for so long. And those are my natural extensions where it's like, I can just sit down with someone and probably shape something very easily, but that's a real time thing. I need to leverage my real time abilities, to unlock that. And that requires the collaborations that we spoke about earlier, where someone that I'm with can just go, oh my God, I'm just going to unlock you. You know what I mean?
I love how you called that your natural extension. I mean, I've got a theory that everyone has their natural creative outlet, So for me, it's writing, and for some people, it's art, where others, it's music, and it feels like you're not actually doing the thing. It feels like you get into a stream of consciousness and you feel as though you're not the one that's actually doing it. You feel like it's just channeling through you. And I think that everyone has the ability to do that, but not for everything. I think that everyone's got their own kind of quirky thing that they just connect with creatively, and that's kind of where they start to channel. That's where, we're talking about the resonance before, they call on an energetic resonance and get into that flow, and things are just happening for them and coming through them. I think everyone has that, but in a way, sometimes people don't find it because of the way that society is structured, and not many people find out what their thing is because we're just jammed into boxes as soon as we possibly can be, and taught how to, walk like robots, and it's not helpful, or they don't get there. They don't find that thing.
Well, they have to work 9 to 5, 9 to 5 at the least. They're lucky to survive, and then they spend the rest of the time glued to some screen scrolling, some for good or bad. Now, listen, as quickly as an aside, on many fronts, I know I've been looking at a low battery thing, and I'm just conscious if I don't plug in, if that affects this upload. As an aside, whether I should I probably plug that in and take, or find a way to. I just don't know what happens if it runs out of juice with all the uploading.
Yeah, we should definitely sort that out. And also we can just wrap up at this point in time. And I think what I've taken from this conversation, one of the primary things has been, we've talked a lot about technology, and we've actually talked a lot about what it means to be human. And I think that being able to see where technology is going whilst remaining and being a part of being able to use technology and being a part of the technology space whilst being able to 100% remain steadfastly connected to what is human in this world is a really, really nice place to sit.
Yeah, it's one foot in both, right? And trying to straddle that divide. It's growing and deepening. I mean, it's where most of my thinking is. It's just, what is our relationship with technology? What is my personal impact in being able to influence it or use it as a tool? What is the impact of it on future generations, intimately my family and children? I mean, these are all the, these are all the things that are a part of the thinking, right? It's that intersection point of what does it mean to be living at all, and also living with this once in a whatever moment, transition that's just, I don't think there's a super digital version. Like, we're pretty much doing it all at once. Are you trying to think of a wrap up?
Well, I kind of think we are wrapping up now. I'm sort of, the wrap up was we essentially have gotten nearly 3 hours into a conversation and then realized when you were about to run out of power that we're nearly 3 hours into a conversation and life goes on and there's other things that need to be done. And that was kind of a circuit breaker. And that's just reminded us, oh my God, we've got other life things to do. And it just feels like a organic ending, and that's how things usually happen. That's the resonance. We were in flow, we got out of the flow, and now we're not in the flow anymore, and it feels like the podcast is kind of over. So and I think that's just beautiful. And so why do we feel like we need to sit here and need to package up an ending and have everything just tie together perfectly? Like, it just ended how it ended. It's ending how it's ending. And I'm just very, why can't it just be like this, like it is, how it is?
That's what it should be. It should be a constant state of this, I think. It should be accepting it as it is, accept each other as it is, accept our ideas, accept all that stuff. I think that's just an honest place to be. If everyone could magically do that, if technology could make everyone just do that, then everything's okay. I think the more that you can get to that realization that it is just, there's a great unfolding that is far beyond anyone's comprehension. And maybe if we just let it unfold over us and just have as much of a fun time trying to catch that wave and not, go under for a minute and get salt water up my nose, just call it a day. I think it's just an honest place to start from anyways. I would say we've done a very good job of turning humans into robots. Let's maybe spend more time trying to turn robots more human.
I could not have put it better myself. And the last two things that you've said feel like a nice, neat bow tie for a very windy and wavy chat. Craig, thank you so much for giving me your Friday morning and part of your Friday afternoon. It is always an honor. So thank you. I mean, I just love having these chats with you. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And until next time, ladies and gents, peace.
For the one person that made it to the end, they've woken up from their nap and it's just ending. They're like, oh.
Thank you so much for tuning into another installment of Unmapped. I really, really hope you enjoyed the episode. I always have a blast creating them, and it brings me so much joy to share them with you. As I said at the start, I'd really appreciate if you share, follow, and review the show if it feels right for you. I'd also like to thank my great mate Josh Ryan for the magic he makes in post-production, my studio partner Bondi Radio, and Arman at Model Studios for the brand's design. I honestly could not do this by myself, so thank you, thank you, thank you. Until next time, I'm Mike Kelly, and this